Hey, I'm back again. I just decided to do this story time since several months back. I had begun a series of videos talking about workplace misconduct, sexual harassment, and things of that nature. One of the behaviors that is sometimes considered as sexual harassment is staring. And what brought that to mind is that there's this guy at the place where I currently work who is always staring at me. I don't really know what to make of it. I kind of feel like it's not due to sexual harassment, but more or less because he may be curious about me. And I'm not much of a talker. I mostly keep to myself. And I'm focused on my work. And it's kind of comical because sometimes when there's nothing to do, he'll start walking over into my direction as if he wants to say something to me. But then when I see him coming, I walk in the opposite direction to avoid talking to him. I don't really have anything against him personally. It's just that I don't want to be seen talking to anyone when I should be working. Anyhow, he's not the only person that stares. There are other people that stare, male and female. But something about the way that he stares irks me and creeps me out. I don't know if it's because of the way he looks, because he's an older white guy. He kind of has this skull and crossbones type of aura or countenance about him, kind of like a goth or a grim reaper type. But he has these tattoos on his hands. Not to be judging people who have tattoos, but I can envision him as being a bad boy in his youth, or a guy who is a former baser or cokehead, and maybe he even spent time in prison. But it just irks me that this guy stares at me. And if he continues, I may even say something to him about it, about how it makes me feel a little bit annoyed and uncomfortable. Another thing about him staring at me is that it kind of also makes me feel like he's maybe a snitch or a gossip looking for something to talk about, looking for a way to find fault with me or my performance on the job. It also reminds me of a time where at this other company I worked for, there was a guy who was kind of similar in that respect. He's always observed and stared at people, and come to find out he was a workplace snitch and got a lot of people fired. This guy, which I'm going to name him Mike, he was younger, maybe in his early 30s, and he's a homosexual, very flagrant and flamboyant about it too. No shame in his game. He was very open, and sometimes would talk about his relationships on the job. I kind of liked him. He was a really fun, outgoing person, witty. Sometimes me and him would have conversations while working, and he had me laughing. Did I already say he's a white guy? Yeah, he's a white guy. At that time, he was in his early 30s. I was in my early 20s back then. One of the reasons why I liked him, although he did stare at people a lot, not only me, is because I learned a lot from him in terms of investing in the stock market, because he was a day trader during the day, and then we would work at night. And he was at that time pretty successful. He made a lot of money doing day trading and trading in penny stocks. And he would give me some tips on how to make money, which I, really didn't pay a lot of attention to, but I still appreciated the advice and information that he was giving to me. There was this other guy that worked with us I'm going to call him Dave. So Dave is a black guy, older. At that time, Dave was probably middle-aged, in his mid-40s. And so Dave is one of those serious types. He very rarely smiles with people. And he's a no-nonsense type of person. And I actually seen him get very serious and stern with the company president, raising his voice at the company president because the company president didn't address him the way that he wanted to be addressed in a meeting. But anyway, getting back on topic, I noticed that every time Mike would walk past Dave's workstation and speak to him, Dave would ignore him. And this went on for like maybe 3 years. I was pretty friendly with Dave as well. And so finally I went to Dave and I was like, I noticed that every time Mike passes your workstation and greets you, you just ignore him. You don't say anything to the man. And I was like, why is that? So he was like, he just came straight out and told me point blank, don't trust Mike. Mike is a fucking snake. He has gotten a lot of people fired. He gossips. He looks for things to get people in trouble for. The least little thing that you do wrong, he'll go run into the supervisor and complain about it and get you either written up or fired. So I would not trust him. I was like, oh, and plus, not only that, I also suspected that I don't agree with this type of thinking, but I believe that Dave also did not like Mike because of his sexual orientation. I didn't have a problem with it. I'm a live and let live type of person, and I feel that whatever someone chooses to do or whatever someone does in their bedroom is their personal business. As long as they don't bring their sex life on the job, hey, what difference should it make to me or anyone else? What ended up happening to Mike is that all of that snitching and gossiping that he did on the job and backstabbing ended up kind of coming back to bite him and coming full circle in a way. I don't want to say karma because it's probably not a really good example of karma, but I kind of feel like what comes around goes around. Maybe that applies in this situation. He had once disclosed to me during a conversation that when he was younger, he had a drug problem, a cocaine addiction. And then a couple of years after he told me that, I had went to the dentist and had to have one of my teeth pulled. This guy, after he found out that I went to the dentist and had my tooth pulled, do you know that he had the nerve to ask me whether my dentist had prescribed me oxycodone or Vicodins? And I was like, why are you asking me if my dentist prescribed me that? He said, oh, because if they did, I would have bought them from you. And I was like, nah, my dentist did not prescribe me any. Those are, by the way, those are opiates, which are very addictive. But my dentist had not prescribed me any of those types of medication. He just prescribed me strong dosages of ibuprofen. Even if the dentist had prescribed me any of those strong opioids or opiates, I still wouldn't have sold or given any of my prescription medications to him because, not only is that a liability, if something were to happen to him after sharing drugs with him, but it's also illegal. And I don't support any form of illegal activity, especially when it comes to drugs. And I don't support drug abuse. That's one tidbit of information about him. And so let me get back to what ultimately ended up happening to Mike. A few years after that conversation that we had about the oxycodone or the Vicodin, he started having problems on the job. He began to not show up for work for days at a time, not even bothering to call in to let the supervisors know what was going on with him. And then a few times he just showed up 2 or 3 hours late without even calling to let anyone know that he would be late. The supervisors became concerned because that wasn't like him at all. They investigated and found out that the reason why he was showing up late for work and not coming in is because he had relapsed and began using drugs again. They gave him a choice and told him that he could either resign or take a leave of absence and enter into rehab. And if he successfully completed the rehab, that he would be allowed to return to work on a probationary basis. So he took the leave of absence and was gone for probably about a good 6 months. And he came back and everything was going good for him for probably about another, I'd say 4 or 5 months after he returned to work. And then all of a sudden, same behavior started to begin to happen again. He began to show up late and started missing days from work. And that was it. They didn't give him another chance after that. They ended up terminating him. And I kind of felt bad for him because he was a good worker. You know, aside from the fact that he was a gossip and got a few people fired, he was still a good worker and he contributed a lot to the company. I don't know whatever became of him because we're talking probably more than 15 years ago these things happened. But anyway, that was just a quick story that a story time that I wanted to share about the workplace snitch and people who stare. Alrighty.